welcome to the video. Here I'm sharing a tried and tested pale ale recipe that works very well for parties, as it is a great crowd pleaser, with the added bonus that this is a fast one from grain to glass, so there should be no concerns in turning this one around within a week to 10 days, assuming you used a fast carbonation kegging method. So with speed in mind, let's get on with it. Let's begin with a quick look at the recipe's vitals. As you can see, the recipe offers an approximate ABV of 4.9%, making it a beer that you can enjoy more than a few glasses of in one session, making it perfect for parties. The BU-GU ratio shown almost at the bottom shows the relationship between bitterness and alcohol at 0.77, which offers a nicely balanced pale ale that suits many types of taste palates. The recipe for this one can be found in full within the video's description area, which is underneath the video window when viewed on a desktop computer. You will also find a link there to the full recipe on Brewhouse, which can be used free of charge with some restrictions. As always, I strongly suggest that you fully convert the recipe before ordering in your ingredients so that you're actually brewing the recipe as intended and to your needs. I also strongly suggest that you brew this recipe as is the very first time rather than tweaking it, as tweaks are already in place to bring this one into a very good shape already. Otherwise, the work I have done here is rather a waste of time. I have an easy guide to recipe conversion using Brewhouse on my channel as shown on screen now. Within this video, this recipe is being brewed using a Brewzilla Gen 4.1 65 litre brewing system to the volume of 10 litres, which is the equivalent of 2.64 US LQD Gallons, but as part of the conversion process, this can of course be scaled and shaped to suit your own brewing system and volume requirements. Let's now look at water. Shown on screen is the water profile that I recommend for using with this recipe. Naturally, using the right water profile is very important. After all, your beer is mostly water and its balance is vital, so that it suits the beer that you are brewing. This classic hoppy water profile from Brewhouse works incredibly well, but represents just one way to go here. So if you have a different profile that you really enjoy with this style of beer, then by all means go with that. Brewhouse has extremely good documentation on how to use the software to make the necessary water changes too, which makes the whole process very easy. I suggest that all brewers, irrespective of experience, start treating their water as soon as possible for the very best of end results. You will actually be surprised how easy this actually is. Now let's dive into the brewing process itself. We'll start by preheating the mash water to the target temperature for your first mash step. Once it reaches that temperature, add your grain and stir thoroughly to make sure everything is evenly mixed. For this step, as you can see, I'm using a drill-powered mash stirrer, which makes a quick work of breaking up any clumps and ensures that every grain is fully saturated. If you're using a traditional mash paddle, then I suggest adding the grain in stages a kilo or two at a time, giving it a good stir before adding more. This steady method helps you create a smooth, consistent mash and prevents any dry clumps from forming. Let's now start the mash. Shown on screen is the mash schedule for this one. Our mashing step here is 68 degrees Celsius or approximately 154 degrees Fahrenheit, which is in the upper range of typical mash temperatures here. This step provides a little more unfermentable sugars than usual and fewer simple sugars, which for this recipe puts the original gravity at around 1.009, which is in keeping with this beer style. Let's now take a look at the grain bill. Firstly, we are using Otter as our main fermentable at 80% of our grist. Like pale ale malt, this is a two-row barley which adds in more biscuity, nutty and toasty flavours to the background compared to regular pale ale malt. These extras certainly help this beer sing and certainly are well worth having. Not that regular pale ale will not work also, so if you cannot obtain Otter then worry not, but naturally it does come highly recommended for this recipe if you can. Next up we have light Munich malt at 15%. This will add a little colour as well as some background flavouring notes of biscuit and nut as well as a slight caramel. This malt adds in some extra complexity that enhances the overall roundness and depth of the grain bill. And then lastly we have Carapils at 5%. Carapils is a very useful malt that provides mouthfeel, foam and body, which provides a very nice balance without altering colour or flavour. When combined together you have a great grain bill that provides nice background flavours along with a gentle sweetness, medium body and mouthfeel, along with a smooth and rounded texture that will all lend itself well to the hops that will grace it further and turn it into a pale ale. Next up is the Sparge, which I recommend doing by hand for an even coverage across the grain bed to release all those trapped sugars. Some actually prefer to skip this step to save time, but according to my taste palette this offers a compromise to flavour. Do your own research here and do what works for you. After all, we all taste things a little differently to one another, and beer is just one example. Now we move to the boil. Before starting your boil timer, it's essential to stir the top foam. As you can see, I've already done this here, breaking it up so that it collapses back into the wort. The foam is mostly made up of proteins. You actually want them in your beer, but if they stay on top, they can easily cause a boil over. By stirring the foam in first, you keep those proteins where they belong and ensure a cleaner, safer boil. Here is now a look at the hop schedule during the boil. There are other steps that use the same hops, which I will come to later. As you can see, we have Centennial, Citra and Simcoe, which is an excellent hop combination and widely used by homebrewers and pro brewers alike. Let's now find out why. Here's why it works so well and what you can expect with visuals from hop control. Simcoe, shown here in orange, adds pine, apricot and earthy undertones, provides structure and a light resinous bitterness, and as well as this, it helps anchor the beer so that it's not just fruity sweet. Citra, shown here in blue, brings explosive citrus via lime and grapefruit, and tropical notes via mango and passion fruit. This fills out the aroma and adds a juicy punch. Centennial, shown here in green, offers a clean lemon grapefruit backbone. It acts as a bridge between citrus fruitiness and Simcoe's pine character. It also adds a touch of floral brightness and nostalgia, as it offers a nod to the classic American pale ales. The overall hop profile that you can expect here is juicy tropical fruit, citrus zest and light pine, with balanced hop flavours and a clean finish with a touch of resin and grapefruit at the end. Towards the end of the boil, I ran boiling hot water through my counterflow chiller to sterilise it, ready for transfer a little later. This is the Red Reaper, a great new chiller that I recently reviewed on my channel that has now become my chiller of choice. Straight after this, and also during the boil, I then added my immersion chiller, the Scylla chiller from JD Brewing, ready for action after the boil. Once the 30-minute boil was complete, I then started work on calling for the hop stand. For this brew I recirculated for a while using the pump, and the Scylla chiller did the heavy lifting in less than a minute, was at temperature for the hop stand. Shown on screen now to the right, you can see the hop stand details. This may not look like many hops, though naturally this is a rather small batch, as I have various versions of this beer already that all taste great, but this final brew naturally represents the golden master of the recipe after various tweaks for improvement. After adding the hops, be sure to give them a really good stir as shown here. This is due to the fact that otherwise the hops will stay on the surface, and naturally we want the vegetable matter to join the tribe at the bottom. But most importantly, we want full utilisation, meaning full extraction of flavour compounds and release of all essential oils. I personally really enjoy this part of the brew. You get some great aromas and the stirring is something I find relaxing. Let me know in the comment section if you enjoy this too. Whilst waiting for the hop stand, I then got my recently cleaned fermentation vessel and started preparing it with acid-based no-rinse sanitizer. It is important to ensure that you do this as late as possible before transfer to ensure that the sanitizer is still active. It was then time for further cooling and transfer using my counterflow chiller and yeast pitching. I highly recommend Verdant IPA yeast for this recipe, used at 21 degrees Celsius or the equivalent of 70 degrees Fahrenheit for optimum balance. This yeast offers juicy esters of peach and apricot without excess fruitiness or fusels, which really suit this recipe extremely well. If you wish to use pressure for fermentation, then ensure that you only start to apply pressure up to 1 bar after 3 to 4 days from fermentation start to be on the safe side, as by this time the yeast full expression will be locked in. To give your yeast the very best start in life, it is very good to rehydrate it using wort, as you can see me doing now. This method also works great at aerating, which keeps the yeast healthy and happy, leading to a successful fermentation with a minimal of lag phase. The very next step is concerning the dry hop additions, which are now shown on screen. Add your dry hops when you are between 5 to 10 gravity points away from your predicted final gravity. I have tried all methods of dry hopping, but frankly nothing so far has had as good results, and there is no need to buy a book either. The very most important thing here is to keep things clean and sanitary, so here is a guide to doing that in a way that has never failed me so far in hundreds of brews. In this example I'm going to use a hop sock, but the procedure is similar with other container types. This starts with boiling the bag. I strongly recommend doing this no matter if the bag has been previously used and cleaned, or if it's a brand new one straight out of the packaging. I then add this bag into a clean container and add sanitizer as a further safeguard. This will be the same container that I used to load the hops into. After this point I then wash and sanitize my hands, and this is repeated if I need to touch the bag after touching anything that is not clean and sanitary. These are very important steps to avoid contamination, which is all too common when it comes to homebrewers making IPAs because of this step. I then carefully add the dry hops with the bag lining the container, being sure that nothing touches the bag except for the hops. Once you have loaded all of your hops into the bag, then be sure to tie a nice strong knot to keep all of the hops contained. This loosely fitting hop bag, so there is room to expand, can now be added into your fermenter. In terms of contact time, 3 days is usually going to be plenty, but 5 days is fine too. I would avoid times more than a week to avoid grassy off flavours though. Let's now take a look at the finished beer, starting with the pour, and I will then go through my own personal tasting notes with you. You can see that the pour is a light gold in colour, but once in the glass the end beer is a sunburst orange. The example you see here is totally natural and no attempts have been made to give it extra clarity. This beer has been under 12 psi of pressure, which is 0.83 bar, and I'm also using this pressure for serving too. This example that you see here is at around the 1 week point from kegging and frankly tastes very ready, just like the previous versions of this recipe while I was still working on final tweaks. This beer is best when tasted at between 7 to 10 degrees Celsius or 45 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, as temperatures below this temperature range will hide flavour. I waited for this beer temperature to warm up some before providing these tasting notes, starting with aroma. Aroma-wise, this is mostly dominated by mango, grapefruit, lime and passion fruit, but there is certainly a varied mix of citrus and tropical fruit to be found here, with some pine and stone fruit in the background that makes this very appealing to the nose. Flavour. On entry you will pick up what was mentioned in aroma. This is certainly nice and fruity with a tropical citrus mix that leads into apricot, stone fruit and pine with an easy grapefruit-like finish. There is nothing excessive about this beer, nor faint either. It's a happy middle ground that will suit the majority. If you like tropical and citrus flavours, then you're certainly going to enjoy this one, as these are the headliners, but there is so much more fruit to discover as you make your way down the glass too, which is held together by a supporting grain bill that gives the beer some extra background flavours, that gives some caramel as well as some slight biscuit and nut that will help give this beer some extra depth and complexity. My final impression of this beer is that this is a great party pale ale due to its mass appeal that will not last the night if there's more than a few of you. So there you have it. Do let myself and the community know what you think of this video, and then later on, once you have brewed this recipe, your own tasting notes and impressions. It is always appreciated to have feedback. Thank you. I do hope that you found this video useful, informative and interesting. If so, why not consider liking and subscribing? For further support you can join the channel's Facebook group, and if you would like to support the channel then check out the channel's merchandise store, as all profits go back into the channel. Until next time, happy brewing!